If you want some tips on how to get jacked extremely fast, then you better have some deep pockets and some shady people to text, because otherwise that ain't happening. But if you want some pretty good tips that you probably have never ever heard of, then keep watching, because these lesser known tips can help you build muscle just as well as any others. Now, I'm confident that most of you watching this won't know every single tip I'm about to share, but I do have one extra bonus tip specifically for those of you that miraculously do know them all already, and that is, put your phone down. Thing is, you're probably dealing with a good dose of what the nerds call analysis paralysis. Super cool phrase, but I personally prefer something more compelling and articulate, like draining the brainy, or I think, therefore I don't. You see, people might feel like they're productive with their fitness goals by watching a bunch of fitness videos, but in reality, all these videos will just overload the brain with information that makes it even harder to do the actual work. So if you have plenty of brain gains already, then it's time to put it all to use and go to the gym after this video. But now let's get started. Let's talk about reps first. If you're someone that is used to doing a fixed number of reps for each set, then you might want to consider not doing that. Instead, for tip number 1, use RPE instead. You see, when it comes to lifting weights, the nerds made it abundantly clear that effort is very important for muscle hypertrophy, aka muscle growth. But when using a fixed rep or rep range, there's no guarantee that our effort will be good enough, which means we might miss out on some gains. So forget hitting a fixed number of reps. Instead, we're gonna keep doing reps until we reach a specific level of effort or exertion. That's where ratings of perceived exertion, or RPE, comes in. Now, an RPE scale itself tends to go from 1 to 10, 1 being essentially zero effort, and 10 being absolutely max exertion of your muscles. To keep effort high, we want to train mostly at an RPE of 8 to 10 each set, meaning you're trying to reach a point where you can physically do no more than about 0 to 2 reps at the end of each set. Now, this ultimately means the number of reps for each set can vary, but that's the beauty of it. It allows us to keep effort high, increase work volume, and get more of them good old gains, which can feed our insecurities. Now, one key thing is that we do have to be honest with our actual effort. Effort is subjective, and even experienced lifters struggle with it. To help, we can practice training all the way to muscular failure, which is essentially RPE 10, where we cannot do a single additional rep even if someone you're trying to impress walks by. The more you practice failure training, the better feel you'll get for RPE. And if you ever do want to go back to fixed reps or rep ranges, you can now choose a better rep range to keep effort high. Again, good effort, good gains. Now, effort is definitely important, but of course, if we really want to build muscle, we just gotta lift more. And not just more reps, but also heavier weights. So for this second lesser known tip, we're gonna work on our strength by, like RPE, using a less conventional measurement. This time, we're talking about training velocity. If you want to get stronger, it all boils down to straight up lifting heavier weights, but we do want to be careful. Yes, we still gotta give plenty of effort, but we do have to balance effort with a kind and precious little thing called fatigue. And here the nerds strike once again. The research has shown that a surprisingly accurate way to quantify fatigue is by measuring losses in lifting velocity throughout a set. In other words, we can essentially determine the best time to stop a set based on how slowly we're moving the weight or bar compared to when we started. Research has shown that choosing the right velocity threshold can lead to the greatest strength and muscle growth while avoiding excess fatigue. Right now, for muscle and strength gains, the consensus among the nerds is that a 20% velocity loss is likely the best threshold, which means cutting off your set once a rep moves 20% slower than the initial rep. 40% velocity loss is also very effective for muscle growth, but not so much for strength, probably because of the higher levels of fatigue. If you think about it, velocity loss thresholds are actually a lot like RPE. Both determine set discontinuation based on changes to a certain outcome tied to exertion. RPE, however, is again fairly subjective, while velocity loss can be easily quantified. Well, maybe not easy in a practical sense, because how exactly do we non-nerds measure a 20% velocity loss? There are some gadgets and software out there that can help, but a simple method is to record a bunch of your workouts and measure the time differences of your reps. Find out how you look when you start slowing down by 20 to 40%. Study it enough so that when you do the exercise again in real time, you'll have a decent idea of when to stop. It's not going to be 100% accurate, of course, but hopefully the more you record, the better you can gauge things. To give you an idea, based on some research, a load between 70 to 85% 1 rep max yields about 2 to 4 reps at 20% velocity loss and about 4 to 8 reps at 40%. It's not guaranteed for everyone, but it should be a good place to start. And finally, my final unknown tip, well, mostly unknown tip, is to add partial reps into your training. This is probably my favorite tip out of the 3. Partial reps are exactly as it sounds. We're training only a part of the full range of motion. Now, what matters here is which part we train. Research has shown that performing partial reps at the longest muscle lengths can be just as effective as doing full reps for muscle and strength, and sometimes even better. Now, the muscle is the longest when it is stretched the most while under tension. Think like the bottom of a bicep curl or the knees bent all the way back in the knee extension. Something about contracting in this stretch position seems to significantly stimulate our muscles, leading to greater muscle hypertrophy and strength gains. We can also typically lift more volume and heavier weights using partial reps. Personally, I definitely noticed some solid strength gains when I started doing more partials. Muscle growth, can't really say, you gotta ask Photoshop. Overall, there's some pretty solid evidence supporting partial rep training at long muscle lengths. Hopefully more to come, and definitely worth giving a shot. And that's 3 lesser-known muscle building tips that can potentially take your gains to the next level. For all of you that already knew all these tips, please feel free to share some secret sexy tips you might know in the comments below. Then put your phone down. Other than that, if you enjoyed this video, then please give it a secret thumbs up and share it with your muscle-loving friends. Subscribe for more and let me know what you think in the comments. As always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to get your protein.